Hi guys, sorry I'm not in class today, but hopefully this video is going to help you so that we can finish up what we didn't do yesterday and then work on what we can do today. So I'm just going to recap what we did yesterday. I will answer any questions tomorrow. Again, I apologize for not being in class and hopefully this helps. It should be better than the Instagram Live that we had tried. Okay, so just to recap from yesterday, we were talking about positive and negative rotations. So we had some vocabulary over here, the initial ray where the angle of rotation starts. We have the terminal ray where the angle of rotation ends. We move in the counterclockwise direction if it's a positive rotation, and the clockwise direction if it is a negative rotation. Okay, we have our reference angle, which is the amount of space that is left over before you get to the x-axis, depending on if you're on the left side of the graph or the right side of the graph. We had coterminal angles, so an angle in standard position, it's counterclockwise one direction, and then clockwise in the other direction, and they meet at the same spot. Okay, so positive one way, negative the other way, and the sum of those two angles adds up to 360 degrees. Okay, I'm pretty sure we did letters A and B, but I'm just going to do it again just so I can walk you through it, and then you can practice on your own. So for 145 degrees, that is between 90 and 180 degrees. So 145 would be in quadrant 2. Okay, it's a positive angle of rotation, so I start at the x-axis always and make my arrow diagram towards the left. I do believe we also did 320 degrees, so 320 degrees is between 270 and 360, which puts me in quadrant 4. Start at the x-axis and make the arrow diagram so that it ends in quadrant 4. 72 degrees is in quadrant 1. It is between 0 and 90. So I'm going to just make my terminal ray, and then the angle of rotation will be from the x-axis in a counterclockwise motion. I do believe we ended at letter D. Some of you had done it, some of you had not. So let's do it again. At negative 210 degrees, because it is negative, I'm going to move in the clockwise direction. So I still start at 0, but I'm going to go clockwise. So this will be negative 90, negative 180, negative 270. So therefore, negative 210 falls between negative 180 and negative 270. And my arrow diagram will be drawn from the x-axis clockwise until it ends in quadrant 2. Okay. Okay, next one. Now, I would say at this point you probably understand what is happening, so it would be in your best interest to maybe pause the video, see if you can do E, F, G, and H, and then only use the video to check your answers or walk you through it as you're doing a couple of them. Okay, 250 degrees. Whoops, let me move over the paper. There we go. 250 degrees is between 180 and 270, so I know that it is in quadrant 3. It doesn't really matter where you draw the terminal ray, like where in quadrant 3. I just positioned it so that it was closer to 270 than it was to 180, but it makes no difference exactly where it falls. Start on the x-axis in the counterclockwise direction of 250 degrees. One more time, negative 310. So I'm just going to count backwards. 0, negative 90, negative 180, negative 270. And I will draw in the clockwise position. Technically, this line here is my terminal ray. And because it's a ray, I should have an arrow. I was just lazy and didn't draw the arrow. Okay, 460 degrees. So we know that when we complete a circle once, that is 360 degrees. So I'm going to start 0, 90. 180 is down here just because I don't want to interfere with the other question. So 180, 270, 360. Another 90 makes 450, plus another 90 makes 540, plus another 90 makes 630, and back in, to 720, and so on and so on and so on. I could keep going around forever. 460 is somewhere between 450, 540, but closer to 450. So I know that the ray belongs in quadrant 2. When I draw my arrow diagram, I'm going to start here. I'm going to come around one complete rotation and then the extra to get me into quadrant 2. Okay, that's how I'm drawing that. When I move to letter H, same thing. It's negative 400. I'm sorry, let me go back to letter G. Sorry. If I were to subtract 360, the entire complete rotation, I'd have 100 degrees left. So when I have 100 degrees, it's a little easier to tell that it is in quadrant 2. Okay. In letter H, this time I have negative 400, so I'm going to count the same way I did before. So negative 90, negative 180. I only wrote it down here so it doesn't interfere with the other question. Negative 270, negative 360, negative 450. So I've passed negative 400. I know that I'm somewhere in quadrant 4. Start at the x-axis, go around once. That's one complete rotation. And then finish it off to end in quadrant 4. Okay. Okay, let's do the backside of yesterday. Okay, here's a blank of yesterday. So let's do the backside of yesterday. Okay, we didn't do any of these questions, so I'm going to do them with you. It may be a good idea for you to pause the video again and see how many of them you know, and then you can watch the video to see if your answers are correct. I will also post just a picture of the answer key if you find that you don't want to watch the entire video because you got it. Okay, number 2 says, in which quadrant would the terminal ray of an angle drawn in standard position fall if the angle measures 860 degrees? So once again, I can either draw the diagram. I like to draw it until I get really used to it. So this is 0, 90, 180, 270. I'm just adding 90 every time I go to a new axis. 270 back to 360 plus another 90 is 450 plus another 90 is 540 plus another 90 is 630 plus another 90 is 720 plus another 90 is 810 plus another 90 is 900, and I've passed 860, so I'm going to stop. So between 810 and 900 means that I would be somewhere in quadrant 2. I'd go around more than once, okay, but I was being asked what quadrant I'm in. I don't need to draw the rotation diagram, but I certainly can. If you don't want to draw the diagram at all, you could start with your 860 and subtract multiples of 360. So I know 2 multiples of 360 is 720. That leaves me left with 140 degrees, which I instantly know is between 90 and 180. So remember, all of the angles of rotation we want to be between 0 and 360. That is the easiest way to spot them. That's the fastest way to know what quadrant it is. So if I subtract the multiples of 360, I'm left with 140, which is in that range that I was looking for. And so it's easier to tell that I'm in quadrant 2. If you don't remember all of that, then just draw the rotation diagram the same as we did yesterday. Okay, now number 3 says give a negative angle that is coterminal with each of the following positive angles. Okay, so remember, if it's a negative angle, so 90 degrees means that this is 90. So my positive rotation is 90. And that means I'm going to go in the opposite direction to end at the same spot. So if I go to the same spot, I know that 90 and the other number have to add up to 360. So I know that the other number is going to be negative 270. 90 plus 270 is 360. I'm going clockwise. That is how I know it's negative. If I didn't want to draw the picture, if I'm at 90, I could simply just subtract 360 degrees, and 90 minus 360 would be negative 270. Why would I subtract 360? Because I want a negative angle, so I'm going in the opposite direction of the positive one. Okay, 330 degrees. I know 330 degrees is in quadrant 4. So this way is 330, which means that the other way has to be 30 degrees, the opposite way, because 330 plus 30 is 360. So my negative coterminal will be negative 30. It's simply negative because I'm going in the clockwise direction. Okay, again, I could simply subtract 360 if I want to rule. And so if I subtract 360, I get my negative 330. 120 degrees, I know is in quadrant 2. So if I go counterclockwise, 120 degrees, it means I have to go clockwise 240 degrees. 120 plus 240 is 360. It's clockwise, so I know it's negative. So my answer will be negative 240. And again, I simply could have just subtracted 360 to get my answer without the picture. I personally like to draw the picture. I think it's helpful and it's less rules to memorize because I can visually figure out what I'm being asked. 210 degrees, I know is going to be in quadrant 3. So counterclockwise, 210. Clockwise, 150. 210 plus 150 is 360. I went clockwise, so it is a negative 150. Again, I could just subtract the 360, and if I subtract the 360, I get my answer without the picture. Okay, coterminal. They end in the same spot in either direction, counterclockwise and clockwise. Okay, so you're looking for its partner pair. Number 4, coterminal angles will always have a measure that differ by. We just did 4 of them, so hopefully you think this is an easy question, and it's 360 degrees. Okay, number 5. For each of the following angles beta, this time it's a different Greek letter. If you prefer x, you can just change it to x. Draw a rotation diagram and then state beta's reference angle. So remember, the reference angle means the amount needed to get to the x-axis. I should say to the closest x-axis. Okay, not to any axis, but specifically to the x-axis. Okay. 160 degrees. So my rotation diagram says that I am in quadrant 2. Here's 160 degrees. The closest x-axis is going to be on my left, which happens at 180 degrees. Therefore, the leftover part must be 20. Okay, so my reference angle, or my beta, is going to be 20. 300 degrees, I know is in quadrant 4. So positive rotation, which means counterclockwise, that's 300 degrees. The closest x-axis is on my right, and it looks like I have 60 more degrees in order for me to get there. So my reference angle is 60. Okay, letter C is 210 degrees. So 210 degrees is in quadrant 3. And it looks like I've just passed the x-axis. So remember, it's to the closest x-axis. Doesn't mean if I'm going to or if I just passed it. So this happened at 180 degrees. I'm at 210 degrees. So I've passed the x-axis by 30 degrees. Therefore, my reference angle is 30 degrees. Okay, how far am I from the x-axis is what I'm looking for. Okay, 78 degrees. So 78 degrees is in quadrant 1. So my reference angle is I am 78 degrees away from the x-axis. It's a very common mistake to try to get to 90, but that's on the y-axis. The reference angle always refers to how far am I from the x-axis. At this point, I would probably pause the video and try the second row on your own. Then you can come back and check your answers. So I'm going to leave the answer key here so that you can check your answers, but I'm not going to walk you through each of the other ones. You can certainly do that part yourself when you are finished, and if you have questions, I will gladly answer them tomorrow.